Celebrate recovery and the conclusion of our monthly theme on anti-bullying. All that and more coming up on Joy in the City True Stories. Joy in the City is a program highlighting people and organizations having an impact in our city. All too often, we hear about the problems and dysfunction in our culture. But we are coming with a different approach as we take a look at all the good things going on right here in our community. I'm Bethany Marshall, and you are about to see what God is doing in our city. We want to thank our program sponsors, Park Home, for the donation of furniture used in our studio, Taylor Design and Events for beautifully decorating our studio space, and our platinum sponsor, Harry's Construction, for their ongoing support of Joy in the City. Celebrate Recovery is a Christ-centered 12-step recovery program for anyone struggling with hurt, pain, or addiction of any kind, and is a safe place to find community and freedom from the issues that are controlling their lives. Loretta Johnson shared how this organization is helping people gain control over uncontrollable situations.
Hello, Loretta. Thank you for joining with me today. Appreciate you taking a few moments to talk about Celebrate Recovery. And before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I just recently retired. I was a professor at St. Francis University. My husband has retired from active ministry. He was a pastor in the United Methodist Church. And so we're both retired now. But when he retired, I was still working. Of course, we left the United Methodist Church where he had pastored and moved to Hollidaysburg and began looking for churches and found one that we liked. We go to Overflow Church. But for me, that was a big life change. There was a big part of my life as a pastor's wife and being involved in ministry that suddenly was very different.
Sure.
So I began to really search as to what God would call me to. And as, you know, getting involved in a new church and just being a part of that church, not having that pastor's wife role, was a little different for me.
Sure.
So I had to really begin to search and see, in addition to my work at St. Francis and involved in some ministry opportunities there, what was God calling me to?
So how did the concept, the desire, the passion for Celebrate Recovery come about for you?
That's an interesting question because that is something that I never would have thought of. Literally, it was probably 3.5 years ago that I was in church one Sunday and just seeking the Lord and feeling really lost in how I was serving the Lord. And it came very clear to me, almost as a voice, not necessarily an audible voice, but the thought came into my head and my heart that I want you to be involved in recovery ministry. And I had never had that thought at all. There were several people from the recovery houses that attended church, and I had gotten to know them, and it was just a burden on my heart. And I actually kind of hid from it for a while. I didn't even tell my husband for probably 5 or 6 months.
Wow.
And then I started to really feel the burden for it and started to look into what the possibilities were, and found out about Celebrate Recovery, and then went to one of their one-day training sessions, and then started to build the team from there.
So what is Celebrate Recovery?
Celebrate Recovery is a faith-based 12-step program where there are 8 principles based on the Beatitudes that lead us into the 12 steps of recovery. But we identify our higher power as Jesus Christ. So it is moving to a very specific relationship with Jesus Christ and God as our higher power, working through those 12 steps. And it is foundational for that, but it's also beyond just addiction recovery. It is freedom from our hurts, habits, and hang-ups, which really broadens that to being basically everybody comes through our life with hurts or hang-ups, and in some cases habits, that we can find freedom from through this 12-step recovery program.
Now, the faith-based concept of this And then the traditional 12-step recovery program were typically two different things. So what you've done, not you've done, but Celebrate Recovery has done, is kind of combine these. I know some people have issue with a faith-based program and 12-step don't go together. So in your experience so far, how have you seen these two melt together?
We see them melt together really well, actually, because the typical 12-step programs do recognize a higher power. But when we look at it and come to understand the work of Christ on the cross for us and his love for us and the power that we have in redemption and the desire that God has for us for wholeness, but he also gives us the Holy Spirit to continue to walk in that wholeness. And so they do mesh together very well. We just recognize that our faith is in Christ Jesus and in God, and the victory comes through the work of the Holy Spirit, continuing to refine us and to mold us.
So obviously not naming any names, what are some of the things that you have seen already in your experience working with Celebrate Recovery here locally?
We launched actually a year ago, October, to a public opening. Prior to that, we took our leadership team through 12 months of step study, of going through the 12 steps with them. So we had a launch team ready to walk alongside of people. We have seen people come with all kinds of issues. Obviously there's a great need in this area for chemical addiction recovery, but also recovery from gambling, pornography, sexual addiction, but anxiety and overeating. We had someone celebrate just a couple of weeks ago of 60 days of freedom from excessive overeating. So those are small steps, but 60 days was more than that individual had ever had before. We celebrate milestones, and at the end of every month, we celebrate and give out chips of who wants to begin their journey, who has 30 days, who has 60 days, who has 90 days. We have people celebrating 30 days. We have people celebrating 4 and 5 years. We have somebody that has celebrated 14 years. So everything in between. So, and again, a variety of issues that we've seen people working on.
About how many people come to the group, part of the group time?
We have really been hurt, of course, by COVID-19. As of March, we navigated from face-to-face to trying to do things on Facebook Live and Zoom calls and that type of thing. And that certainly hurt our numbers. And so probably with our leadership team and the number of participants that are coming, we are probably averaging about 20, sometimes more than that, 25, sometimes less than that.
Wow, it's still significant.
It is. Yeah. It is. And I guess one of the things that I've learned, though, is in ministry, your success is not always measured by numbers.
Absolutely.
You know, we just had such a joyous time at the end of September celebrating these milestones and seeing people come and pick up a blue chip that says, I want this to be day one of my new journey, of my journey towards recovery. And so that's been really exciting.
And I love that it's faith-based. What are some of your future goals over the next year, 5 years with this?
Well, my heart is still obviously in the recovery ministry, and I just want to see God grow it, but that has to be in His timing. What the goal, one of the goals is to, as the participants come, they move from being participants in their own recovery to becoming accountability partners for others, sponsors for others. So that's another aspect of our program that we have. It's not just about the general meeting. During that general meeting, we have the opportunity to build relationships, and so then we build accountability partners, and then our leadership team has gone through the 12 steps, which is a kind of a second part of it, if you could think of it almost like a funnel, whereas the weekly meetings are the big group, and then you build accountability, and then you work with a sponsor to work through the 12 steps on a deeper level. So we have our leadership team's available for that. But the goal will be that as people work through the program, work with their sponsor, go through the 12 steps, then they can continue to become a sponsor and take that next step with somebody else. And that the new leadership will come up through the program of individuals who are consistently coming and consistently working on their issues.
So if somebody's watching this and maybe they're battling addiction of some sort, and they've even gone through different rehabs and different programs, but they have never done this, what is something they can do? What do they need to do to get connected to you and the program?
We meet every Thursday night at 6:30. Currently, we're meeting at Hope Community Church at 1520 11th Street in Altoona. Our meetings look like this. We have an time for just gathering. We do some worship. Right now, we're not doing singing because of the COVID concerns. But we share in the 12 steps. We have a teaching one week each week that teaching will focus on one of the 12 steps, and we may spend a couple weeks on one step. The themes of those steps, whether that's denial or powerlessness or taking action and hope, and those are some of the themes. So each week in that teaching time, in the large group setting where we have men and women and everyone is together, we have that teaching. And then we break up into gender-specific open share groups. And the open share groups are a safe place where you can share what you're going through. If there's enough, we try to keep those groups small. As we grow, those groups will even become issue-specific. So we may have a women's codependency group and a women's addiction group. We may have a men's addiction group and a men's, dealing with another specific issue. Right now, those are not specific just because of our numbers. But we have a women's open share group and a men's open share group. Open meaning that it's open for anybody to come, but gender specific. And in those open share times, we have just some questions that we'll ask or just discussion. But those are really set apart to be groups that anonymity and confidentiality are one of the important keys. We establish that we're not here to fix anybody. We're here to support each other. So everybody has the opportunity to share whatever they're going through. We aren't a therapy session. We're a support group. And so we don't make any pretenses that, this is about therapy. This is about support and working together, walking together, that journey to recovery. So that's kind of the goal, or that's kind of the format of our Thursday night meetings. We're usually finished by 8:15 or 8:30. Once we move out of some of the COVID restrictions, we will add some singing and some worship back into that. We'll add some cafe time, some fellowship time. But right now we try to be attentive to that social distance, physical distance, and yet still keep the core, the important core of the program there.
Wow.
So that's where you can find us. You can find us on Facebook, and that would just be Celebrate Recovery Hope Community Altoona, PA, if you look that up on Facebook. And our email address as well is celebraterecoveryhope19@gmail.com.
All right. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you for, like I said, taking a few moments, sharing about this, and it's something that's very needed. We've talked to some other people that, like Salvation Army, and have done different things, but this is something that has a unique part of our community as well, and we'll continue to pray as a community of faith. Continue to pray that this continues to blossom.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It certainly is needed. I was talking to Blair County Drug and Alcohol a week or so ago, and so far this year, as of the end of August, there have been 35 overdoses, fatal overdoses, that have come out of just 2 of the emergency response areas in Altoona and Logan. And all of 2019, there was 28. So as the end of August, we're already at 35 fatal overdoses, and that doesn't count the ones that were not fatal. So we really do need to come together as a community and support our recovery community. But also, again, I just go back to the fact that it's not just about chemical addiction. Some people are coming out of physical abuse. People are realizing that they have an issue with perfectionism or anxiety or eating disorders. And we all bring into our lives hurts, habits, and hang-ups that God really desires to redeem and heal. And then we can be that support for somebody else.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much
Thank
once
you.
again. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
If you know a person or organization impacting our city, we want to hear about it. You can contact us at 814-944-1948 or by email at stories@joyinthecity.org.
Today's Platinum sponsor is Harry's Construction, whose motto is, "If you can dream it, we can create it." Recently opening Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center so you, the consumer, can see examples of the variety of services provided by the team at Harry's Construction. Be sure to visit Harry's Construction Kitchen and Bath Center at 114 Main Street in Bellwood. You can also visit their website to see pictures of home improvement projects over the years. Thanks again to Harry Halk and the team for supporting Joy in the City.
Today we conclude our theme of anti-bullying as we discuss the traumatic effects with clinical professionals and youth workers on bullying in today's culture.
Thanks for joining with me for a few minutes today. Continuing to talk about bullying, and tell me a little about yourself and your work with students.
I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Pennsylvania. I've worked for 12 years in the field in various capacities. Worked with, at first, a psychologist for 6 years and got a good foundation of various aspects of the field. And I've worked the last 2 years with Christian Counseling Associates.
Yeah, I've been in ministry for going on 13 years. Started actually as a teacher in inner city school district in Harrisburg area. Ended up getting into after school programmings and then really focusing on faith elements in those after school programming. About 5 years ago, I moved here, got plugged in with Refuge Youth Network, and I'm the director of operations over there. So my job is to have a bead on what's happening with youth throughout our area.
So, in the realm of bullying, what kind of bullying have you seen with the kids you've dealt with?
Yeah, so it's not the TV stereotypical type of bullying that we see nowadays. Nobody's yoking each other up against the lockers and holding people up and taking their money and things like that. It's actually more psychological and emotional bullying that I'm seeing. My first classes, we had a lot of kids that would end up fighting each other or whatever else. This isn't the case with what bullying looks like now. Statistically, when it comes down to it, I'd say about 50% of it is really just emotional, overwhelming of people degrading character, spreading rumors, things like that. And so there's a lot of fighting that we have to do on our side of things to build in the security and depth of who the character of a person is.
I deal mostly with adolescents and adults. So in adolescence, I've seen bullying and some bulliers. And in children, I deal mostly with the parents. I don't typically do children under 12.
Okay. So you deal with the parents as in to help them cope and help them instruct their kids, or do you mean you deal with parents as an adult being bullied and so forth?
All of the above.
Okay.
There are parents that come in and having trouble with their children, and we talk it out, and it turns out it's bullying. Sometimes they were bullied as a child when we get to talking and connect the dots of their past, and sometimes they were bulliers, you know, and that causes an array of problems when you get older too.
What are some of the long-lasting effects that you've seen from being bullied in particular?
From being bullied, like if it's not treated, low self-esteem, having a sense of like they can't accomplish anything, having that depression, They keep their face down. They're not outgoing. They're not always happy. They tend to be more sad. Various factors like that kind of go throughout life if you don't get it treated.
I've had many cases of kids that have attempted suicide, found substance abuse to be a way to escape from those things. I've had a couple kids actually go to the place of taking their own lives. And that's hard to watch because you're there as a leader trying to help them build and instill value inside of them. And the value of their peers or others that are influencing them causes this permanent damage, not only to them, but to others that are in their life, in their community. And we're missing a great person because of the influences of bullying.
If somebody's not specifically reaching out, what are some signs of someone who's being bullied that you have seen?
I have a list of that so I wouldn't forget any of them. Some of the signs are if it's physical, unexplained injuries, lost or destroyed clothing, books, losing jewelry, iPods, books, or things like that, things they might take to school with them, jewelry. Frequent headaches, stomach aches, especially if the young kids. They're not as adept at explaining their feelings and emotions or getting in touch with them, so it might come out in acting out or being sad or staying in the room, not wanting to go to school, stomach aches, headaches, mom, take me to school, that sort of thing. Changes in eating habits. Coming home hungry because someone took their lunch money. Having, like skipping meals because they're depressed and don't want to eat. Difficulty sleeping, nightmares, declining grades, loss of interest in schoolwork, sudden loss of friends, avoidance of social situations, the feeling of helplessness, decreased self-esteem, and self-destructive behaviors such as running away from home, just acting out, things like that, again, especially in younger children.
Showing up. There are kids that we've seen that we've had all summer long, great, all of a sudden they get into school and they just become a completely different person. And you don't know what's on their social media and what they're getting. See, when I was growing up, if bullying happened, it was when I was with other kids. Now it's always there. It's always available to them. And so their character starts to change. You see this unsurety of like who they are as a person. They're insecure with a lot of different pieces, and they're desperately trying to draw attention to themselves. Most of the time because they need help. They're just trapped and they need help. A lot of unsurety is a big piece of this. So unsurety of who they are, trying to fit in, commonly finding ways to draw attention to themselves.
Have you dealt with many kids that are actual perpetrators or actual bullies?
Yeah, so I would say that you have both sides often. For a while, I actually worked with probation as somebody that helped us do programming at our last youth center that I was at. And you would see that oftentimes those that find a way of being whether it would be emotionally or verbally assaulted, end up finding that to be the way that they protect themselves from others and then do that to them also. So we've dealt with a lot of kids that come from either that's the way that they grew up or the way that they have learned how to insert power over others, and showing them that value, that degrading somebody else doesn't mean that you're bringing value to yourself either.
In your experience, let's say that someone's not being counseled or going through some kind of therapy. What are some things that a parent can do or a child can do to help cope with some of these situations?
That's a good question. If someone's not going through therapy, if it's a child that's being bullied, I would encourage them to feel safe to talk to a guidance counselor, a teacher they feel safe with, an adult they feel safe with. Many children blame themselves because the bullies threaten them, tell them they'll hurt them and hurt their families. So they blame themselves. They're scared to tell anybody. They feel like a weakling, like they can't stand up for themselves, things like that. So lots of reasons why they don't tell parents, but I would certainly encourage kids to talk to someone. For parents that notice the signs, talk to your child, and be open and honest with them, and let them be open and honest about their feelings. Don't downplay anything. Don't minimize any of their feelings. Help them kind of, even if they're younger kids, maybe learn what their feelings are, feelings charts, different ways of helping a child understand that this is sad, not just headache or tummy ache, things like that. So definitely talking to someone, and parents, if they're aware of it, get the kid into counseling. There are so many wonderful therapies they can do with children, besides play therapy. There's EMDR and different types of therapy they do with kids that's very effective for trauma and bullying.
My first and foremost step whenever I deal with bullying is to just be honest across the board. Find a person that you feel completely secure with, somebody that you trust, and just be honest. A lot of kids come to us with a lot of problems, and bullying is obviously, I just dealt with this last week, dealing with a kid that was struggling with bullying. And if you're not honest and aren't able to walk through that with me, how am I supposed to help you? And so I would say, first, there are people that love you in this community, whether you know them or not. That there are people that love you in this community and want to see you be an intricate part of what we're doing here. And find someone that you can trust to first share your story with them without any judgment, without any preconceived notions, and then let that person help you. That's a hard process, especially as a young teenager, young adult growing up. A lot of times you want to be self-assured of who you are and where you're going, and you're scared of somebody else coming in to help you. The only way that we can conquer this is to having those strong voices, those strong opinions, to be able to step over that and be able to sometimes be an advocate for you.
I know that therapy at one point was stereotyped as someone who's weak that needs therapy, but the reality of it is it's actually very valuable for even people who have good family situations and all that kind of stuff. So if somebody would want to get therapy, maybe get connected with your organization, what would they have to do?
They would just have to call our hotline. It's 1-724-396-1510. That's our intake hotline. And they would talk to someone that would take their information, find out the area they're in, and connect them with a counselor, all within generally 2 hours.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for a few moments with us and talk about this meaningful topic that affects so many kids and adults today.
Yes, it does.
All right. Appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
That's all the time we have today. Thanks for watching Join the City True Stories. Let me encourage you to watch other episodes of people and organizations having an impact in our community on ABC 23 at 5:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. every Sunday. You can also catch us each week on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Until then, be encouraged because God is moving in our city.
God is on the move.